everyone who just jumped on, we'll begin in a minute. Thank you guys for joining us today for Governor Jeb Bush. And thank you to Governor Bush's team and Governor Bush for participating in this and setting up in this very special learning opportunity for all of our students worldwide.
I think it's important to let the governor know that not only do we have students from 10 plus states in the US, but we've also got students joining us that are in our Spain program, our France program, our Italy program, Latin America. So students from all over that are part of the larger Academica family of schools.
We're gonna go ahead and begin. So everyone, thank you very much for meeting with us today for this very special learning opportunity with Governor Jeb Bush, the 43rd governor of Florida. Along with being a former governor of Florida, he has done so much as far as education and school choice that can be felt not just around our country, but also around the world. So a lot of us here on this Zoom meeting owe a great debt of gratitude towards Governor Bush for his endeavors when it comes to education in our country. So Governor Bush, if we could begin, if you could just tell the students your name and a little bit about your background and how you kind of came about and got involved in public service.
My name's Jeb Bush. I was the former governor of the state of Florida for 8 years, which was an incredible joy. I'm the son of Barbara and George H.W. Bush. My dad was the 41st president of the United States. And my brother, who was governor, overlapped my time as governor. He was governor of Texas for several years and then became president of the United States. He was the 43rd president of the United States. So the idea of public service was not necessarily a run for office, but the idea of serving others was inculcated in all of us, my 4 siblings and myself, by my mom and dad, who basically said to be, there's no definition of a successful life without helping others. And so that tradition continues in the Bush family. My parents' children and grandchildren, and soon great-grandchildren, do spend time, very rewarding time, helping others. I happen to be, like my older brother, I had a chance to serve in the political arena, but you can serve a lot of different ways, right? You don't have to just serve as a candidate or serve in government. There's lots of ways that people can help others in their own communities. And in the pandemic world and the COVID-19 world, we're seeing those acts of compassion happening each and every day, and it's uplifting for me, at least personally.
Do you think you could take a moment and talk to the kids about the Foundation for Excellence in Education and how that kind of came to be and what your inspiration behind that was?
Sure. The foundation is a policy foundation. It's a charitable foundation, but it's a policy foundation. And the objective was, to begin with, at least in my post-gubernatorial life, was to take the suite of reforms that we implemented in our K-12 system in Florida to take them around the country, to give governors and policymakers, legislators, some ideas about how to transform the K-12 system. And so those suite of reforms would be parental choice. I believe that parents know best for their children, and there should be different kinds of offerings because children are unique and different. And so parental choice, robust accountability, which is hard because people don't like to be held accountable. It's natural to blame others, Have you ever heard the expression, I don't know if it's an expression in France and Spain, but the dog ate my homework is kind of a common thing, not just for young people. A lot of people excuse away why they're not successful, but if you have real accountability that's transparent, it mobilizes, the incentives and the interests are aligned the right way. I'm passionate about the belief that we should make sure that early childhood education happens for every child. The gaps that start happening at an early age are really difficult to overcome. I know Academica focuses on that because if you can get to 4th grade functionally literate, being able to read, you're going to be able to learn the material. And if you can't, it's really hard to imagine how you're going to be successful. So ending social promotion, putting reading coaches in schools, all the things that we did, we now go on the road and try to focus on helping others with those ideas and new ideas as well, much of which relate to digital learning. Right now, we're focused a lot on the digital divide. It's outrageous in our country, the most prosperous country on the face of the earth, perhaps, that there are 450,000 teachers that don't have broadband access. How are they supposed to teach their classes remotely if they can't access broadband? And there are millions of kids that don't have access, either because they're in rural areas or because they're living close to the poverty level in our country. So there are many policy things that need to be done to fix that. And I'm hopeful over the next year that we'll begin to create a national strategy implemented locally in that regard. So our foundation is a policy foundation. We give people ideas and we ask them to be big and bold. I think right now our country needs political leaders that are bigger and bolder, not thinking about themselves, but about thinking about others.
We can't thank you enough for all of your sacrifices when it comes to education in our country. I know that putting that best practices model in schools has definitely paid off in dividends, especially for like our academic schools. And so would it be okay if for the last few minutes, if we had some of the students ask you questions?
Yeah, can I mention one other thing?
Yeah, of course, sir. Yes, sir.
On my right is my wife, and she's been Romero Britoized. Romero Brito is a Miami artist from Brazil. I think arts education is also really important for learning. It stimulates creativity, and the next generation of jobs require all sorts of creative skills. And so, A, I love my wife. We've been married for 47 years. And B, I love the art because it reminds me of the importance of arts and education. And I met my wife when I was 17 in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. And I fell madly in love with her. And I hope that everybody has a chance to fall in love with someone, and it's life-changing. My life before Columba was BC, was great. Okay, it was great, but wasn't fantastic. After Columba, AC, I was spurred to be better and to strive for success in every way because of my love for her. So, se te quiere, mi esposa adorada Columba.
Wonderful advice, sir. Thank you so much, Governor. I'm going to hand it off to Lazaro at Cohia. Has a question for you, and we will go ahead and spotlight their video and unmute them. So Lazaro, go ahead and ask your question to Governor Bush.
My question for you is, if a student wanted to get into politics or civil service in the future, what advice would you give them?
You know, a lot of people want to get in politics, and they think that, okay, I'm going to run for city council, and then I'm going to run for mayor, and then I'm going to run for state house, and then I'm going to run for governor. They think of it as a career. And my advice is always different than that. My advice is find things that you're passionate about, be successful at it, whether it's business or a charitable cause or being successful in every way possible, and then take those skills, those learnings of being successful in life and transfer them to public service. You know, career politicians sometimes miss the whole life journey. And the life journey part of life is really where you get understandings of the plight of people. You learn so much more, and striving to achieve success gives you skills to be able to serve others and be in a political process. So be successful in whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're, wherever you think your path is on, and then don't assume that it's, you're going to have a career the rest of your life in that. Life is much more interesting when you're pursuing the unknown, rather than having it all planned out. I think young people these days spend way too much time trying to think about what they're going to do, and not enough time doing it. And then life is full of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and the joys and success of success and failure create real opportunities for you. So whatever your passions are, go out and do it, and you'll learn from that, and the next step will happen, and it'll happen really naturally.
Hi, Governor Bush. My name is Patton, and I live in Nevada. I wanted to know, who did you look up to when you were growing up, and what did you admire most about them?
Well, the greatest man I've ever met in my life was my dad, and he was an inspiration, not by talking about things, but just how he lived his life. He was the most generous man. He, like you're named after General Patton, one of the great American warriors. My dad was served in World War II. Patton, your namesake was in Europe. My dad served as a youngest Navy pilot in World War II, was shot down in the Pacific. Then he went back to Yale, was captain of a baseball team there. Then he went out to West Texas to pursue his dreams. And he was a congressman, CIA director, Republican National Committee chairman. I'm missing vice president and president, obviously. In his post-presidential life, he continues to inspire others. And so his lifelong journey, which ended a couple of years ago at the age of 94, is my inspiration. All the mistakes I've made in my life, and I'm not going to tell you how many I've made, but I've made a lot, have nothing to do with my dad, who I consider to be near perfect under God's watchful eye. So he's always been my inspiration. And at some point, I realized, you know, a lot of kids want to be like their dad, right? I realized I couldn't be like him. He was too perfect. So I strived to be half the man he was. And it turned out okay. That way I didn't have to be all, worried that I was not quite as good as him, but no one was. So he was my inspiration and still is to this day.
Hi, Governor Bush. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to ask, what is your proudest accomplishment regarding your contribution to education in our country so far?
I think it's if I had to pick one thing, it's opening up the school systems for more parental choice. That was the catalyst for improvement. But school choice in and of itself isn't all you need, because you need to have, if the choices have to be good, right? Like you go to a great school. If you don't have accountability around the choice and parents aren't informed with adequate information and students aren't motivated with higher expectations, then you don't get the desired results. Choice in and of itself is good, but it's not the full package. You need to have a comprehensive approach. And I think what I'm most proud of is that I started with the premise that every child is capable of learning, that it doesn't matter what family structure you have, the level of income. We're given gifts to be able to learn. And I think what we need to do is create a system where the adults in the system organize themselves around children so that they reach their God-given potential. That's what I'm most proud of, is to start with the premise that every child can learn. Because we excuse away why some kids don't learn because of life circumstances, and that dooms them. I'd rather start with the premise that every child can learn and then figure out ways to make sure that they do. And that was kind of, when I was governor, that was not really the norm in our country. And now more and more states and more policymakers believe that's the case.
My question is, what would the typical day will look like for you when you were governor of Florida?
It started back, I was governor a long time ago. So it started at 6 in the morning. I read 8 newspapers. I don't know if newspapers exist anymore. So I would read all the state newspapers to find out what was going on, what people were saying. Was there a problem I wasn't aware of? I get to work really early, and depending on the day, I would answer emails. I answered every email that came my way. I was called the e-governor back then because I answered something like 600,000 emails when I was governor. And it could be like everything from a raccoon in someone's attic to a person having problems with their teacher. I mean, the fact is, people expect the people in public life to help them solve problems, even if it's not necessarily the responsibility of the governor to do every one of these things. I strive to have a servant's heart, which meant that I had to listen to people. Even if it wasn't my job, I found ways to try to help. So a lot of my time was spent on that. And then at any given time, there were policy initiatives that I really believed in. And in politics, it's really easy for people to get in front of a parade and say, I did this. But the hard part's actually executing on a plan, on a strategy. And so I spent a lot of time working with really talented people, having their back and helping them, basically, if they made mistakes, to take responsibility for it, encouraging them to be bigger and bolder and have a sense of urgency about implementing policy. And then I think the final part was, I'm an introvert. I'm not like, I don't get my energy of interacting with people. So I spent time forcing myself to be extroverted, because in public life, you have to be out amongst people. So I would, in a given week, I would try to spend 3 days out on the road and 4 days working in the state capitol. And over time, I got pretty good at creating the right schedule. And then the final thing that I did that I really wish I did more of was I created a thing called Time to be Governor Day, which sounds kind of weird, right? But basically, it's very easy in a management leadership position to be living the tyranny of the moment. You know, everybody's coming at you, they're telling you what you do, you're scheduled, all the, you know, doing other people's agenda. So I would take at least once every other week a full day where I got to do what I thought was the right thing to do. I wasn't scheduled. And I would call people that I admired and seek out their advice. I would call people that were hurting and tell them I cared about them. I just did a bunch of different things unscheduled, basically to recharge my batteries, so that I wasn't always just, you know, scheduled to the point where I was kind of a robot. And it worked. I got better at it as I went along.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bush. My question is, what advice would you give for students that are going out in the world and discover what they would like to do with their lives?
Well, I kind of gave the advice already, and something I really believe in, which is pursue it. Basically, have a bias towards action rather than, oh my, what am I going to do? How, you know, I mean, I think it's really important. The things I've learned in my life was I did things, and then it led to something else, and it led to something else. So I'll give you an example. When I was 24, I was working at a bank in Houston, Texas, and the chairman of the bank called me up. I was his assistant because I knew how to write, which, by the way, is a skill that if you have, is a huge advantage, being able to communicate with the written word. So I was his assistant, and he knew my wife was from Mexico, so he assumed I was bilingual, which I kind of was. And he said, I want you to go to Venezuela and open up the office. Now, at the time, Venezuela was like the second most expensive city in the world. It was crazy. It was just huge growth, lots of it was a crazy place. And I had 2 little kids, 16 months and 3 months. And rather than say, oh, I don't know, that's like too much, maybe it's too much for my family, I said, okay, when do we go? And it was an incredible, thanks to my wife's, you know, she had all the hard work, taking care of kids in a place that had water like 3 times a day for an hour. I mean, we struggled with it, but it was an incredible learning experience. And so my advice to you is, don't think about everything to the point where you're paralyzed. Think about it a little bit, but then act on it, because whatever happens once you do that, it opens up other doors. If you're thinking about it so much, no doors are open. You're sitting on the sidelines of life. And the pursuit of things in life are what give real meaning to life, not overthinking things. That advice will give you huge advantages over your peers. Huge advantages, because too many young people now, for whatever reason, maybe it's their parents, helicopter parents on top of them, telling them not to do this, being so overly cautious. If you have a bias towards action, it will propel you forward faster than anything else.
Thank you, Governor. Those are really inspiring words. And I have to tell you that my inspiration for having even gone into the world of charter schools more than 20 years ago came from you, when you started the first charter school here in the state and led by example. And that was a big thing. I think the example you gave, and as a leader here in Florida, and basically helping establish, not just setting an example as a policymaker, but just as an individual, private individual, going out there and starting the state's first charter school, I think has had resonance across the nation and across the world. So it's an example we're hoping to keep alive. And again, thank you so much for your leadership. And it's been a joy working with you over the years, and looking forward to many, many more years working with you.
Thank you, Fern. By the way, you've taken that little idea of a 90-kid charter school in Liberty City and have expanded it so phenomenally well with so much innovation. Thousands and thousands of students are having a better chance of gaining the power of knowledge thanks to you and your team. So kudos to all your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Governor Bush, before we let you go, I'm going to go ahead and everyone on here, we have students from all over the world, countries everywhere, and they're all Academica students. I'm going to unmute everybody to say thank you to Governor Bush, and then I'm going to end the meeting for all. So thank you very much for your time, Governor Bush. You are phenomenal. All of your contributions in education, we cannot thank you in charters enough for helping fix education in our country and even around the world.
Go Miami Heat.
There we go. Game time tonight. All right. Can we all say thank you to Governor Bush?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.